All right. Arsalan, I have a list of questions that clients, or non-technical clients ask about AI all the time. But I think the one that's
Mhm.
pretty much right at the top of the list is which AI automation platform should I use? So if they're enterprise clients, they may have the choice between something like Microsoft Copilot or, Google Gemini, etc. But then
Mhm.
most of the sort of small to medium-sized businesses, while they could be using those tools, they obviously have a wider range of tools that they could potentially use. So they could look at things like N8N, Make.com, all of these tools.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
help me out here. How does one
Yeah.
even go about choosing what platform to use?
Yeah. Look, this is one of those things that they either come to us and ask these questions or they like give it to a junior analyst and they'll be like, this is the use case, go figure out what to do. And the poor kid is just Googling,
Right.
AI platform for X. And I know this because I used to be that kid like 3 years ago and I was Googling things for a mutual friend of ours every time a new requirement came in. Look, the the best tip that I can give you here is that don't box yourself into just Copilot or Gemini because you think that those tools offer you some kind of enterprise grade, solutions that just work better or they're more secure or faster. The best thing to do is to just Google AI landscape reports, right? So there are new startups popping up every week in specific industries for specific sectors for specific use cases, and Andreessen Horowitz does a really good job of compiling these lists. And what I would just do is, I would Google AI landscape for voice agents 2025 or AI landscape for sales agents, for desktop research, for, user experience, for voice. And I would just start picking tools up. Almost all of them are funded, almost all of them give you a free trial. If you're at the stage where you're having to look up which tools to use, you're probably a few months behind the competition anyway, and you don't know enough about what's going to work and what isn't. So, the first thing that I would say is if you're at the stage where you're looking up tools, stop worrying about which one's the correct one, right? I won't be able to tell you that. No consultant's going to be able to tell you that. And you certainly don't know what you need. So just get started. Don't like be afraid to change, a few weeks in if you think something isn't working well for you. But at a high level, what I would say is Copilot, it's touted as best for security. And that's certainly true. It's got very good integrations with Azure. So if your data sits in that tenant, stick with Copilot and start experimenting there. If you're a smaller company, probably a fresh startup or a small boutique firm using Google Workspace, Gemini, Notebook LM are your friends. Notebook LM is definitely very powerful, very scalable. So use that extensively. Share that across your team. If you're looking to do automations, Relevance AI is the closest that comes to building agents that seem to work well off of just prompts. So I would say that's the easiest place to get started and really understand what AI tools are, what AI agents are, how to orchestrate, larger workflows, how to call APIs. It's a very user-friendly experience.
Okay.
If you already know your way around it, I would say N8N and Make,
Hmm.
right? Those are probably very good. I would start with N8N just because of how much community support there is available.
The first one that stood out for me was when you said, "Oh, start by doing a Google search for, the landscape for whatever solution that you're looking for." That suggests to me
Yeah.
that there may be different platforms that are good based on different use cases. Am I hearing that right?
Yeah,
But that's
absolutely.
scary to me because, like,
Absolutely.
as if it's not overwhelming already that we have to try and figure
Yeah.
out a tool. Now you're telling me that there might be a different tool for every automation that I need to make. Like that doesn't sound like a good thing to me, to be honest.
I disagree. And I'll tell you why.
Okay.
let's say you're building an automation for a call center, like some kind of customer support agent. Why would you sit down and rebuild it in N8N? If the team at 11 Labs does a really good job for you, or a full stack solution like VAPI AI does a really good job for you, and they give you a free trial, they've de-risked it, just go use their solution. Plug it into your software, plug it into your workflows. What I will say is that there is a little bit of extra work that everybody does have to do right now in terms of coming to terms with which tool they want to stick with long term. And yes, that is an overhead, but I think it's an exciting thing. I think it's like once you find the tool that works, it just makes sense.
Right. So is it webhooks that are allowing this to be possible? So the fact that, for example, I may be a small or medium-sized business. I have maybe 3 or 4 different use cases for AI automation. One of them could be like customer support. So let's just say there is
Yeah.
a specific AI automation kind of platform for customer support, and I go and I start using them. But then, of course, I need to still hook that solution up to, let's say, my Gmail, to my
Hmm.
Notion, or whatever my team's using. So I'm assuming
Yeah.
that that's going to happen through webhooks or some sort of integration.
Yeah. Look, the engineering teams behind these solutions are so good, and their product teams are so dialed in. If that tool, in the industry generally needs to be connected to another tool downstream in your workflows, they will usually offer a very good integration. So you don't need to worry about if it's an API call, if it's a webhook, if it's a chain notification. Most of that will just be encapsulated in the solution, and the people who are asking these questions, the people looking into these tools, will just have to, click a few things, maybe, add a few credentials here or there, and it should just work.
So the other interesting thing that's kind of coming out of this is the difference between, even though large language models have made it possible for people to literally use English as a programming language, and that's opened up, it's made it accessible to so many more people, like myself,
Mm.
who might not be,
Yeah.
coders. However, there are still levels of proficiency and comfort with
Hmm.
automation software, right? So what you're suggesting there
Yeah.
in terms of go to a specialist um, automation platform for whatever vertical or whatever, like, use case you're using, um, that would probably
Yeah.
be for somebody who's not particularly comfortable with building their own automation workflows themselves and customizing it and everything, right? They kind of want something more out of the box. So on the flip side, for somebody who does want additional functionality, they want to make things really custom, is that where you would go and experiment with something like a Relevance AI, or even like a Make.com or N8N?
Yeah. If the requirement clearly is that, I've tried a few tools and they just don't work and I have a very specific workflow, absolutely. If you know exactly what steps to take, if you know exactly what's going to work and what isn't, and you know that the other tools don't offer that functionality, just start building it in N8N, right? If it's not some kind of back-end workflow that's connecting a bunch of things and executing a bunch of steps, and it really requires just an agentic kind of, execution, start on relevance. One of those two. If you need to stick inside, an enterprise tenant, then just go to Gemini or to Copilot. But yeah, if you've exhausted all other options, then for sure, try and build it yourself.